Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on the outcomes of the expert workshop on scientific and technical work conducted under the Convention on Biological Diversity relevant to marine areas beyond national jurisdiction. My name is Joe Appiat. I coordinate the work on marine, coastal, and island biodiversity at the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And it's a great pleasure to have you all in this webinar. We're going to go over, we're going to introduce the background of the workshop, a little bit of the background and context for this. We're also going to have a presentation of the outcomes of the webinar, the main outcomes of the webinar. There was a lot of things discussed, of course, by the co-chairs. Then we'll have some reflections on those outcomes from some key partners from different agencies, different intergovernmental agencies, and also from some party perspectives. We'll also at the end have some time for Q&A. And hopefully be able to address some questions that you may have regarding the outcomes. I think many of you know that the next BBNJ PrepCom is starting next week. We had actually initially hoped to have a side event at the PrepCom, but given the heavy workload of the PrepCom, we know there won't be actually any side events during the on-site side events. So we're having this webinar to basically explain what happened at this important workshop. So while I'm going to pull up my slides, but while I'm doing that, I just wanted to inform you all that this is, as this being a webinar, it's a bit more of a one-way conversation, unfortunately, or fortunately. You won't be able to unmute yourself or turn on your camera, but you will be able to put in questions into the Q&A box as far as I understand, if it should work. So I trust you can all see my slides and that my colleagues will yell at me if you can't see my slides, but in the absence of that, I'm going to proceed. So you can see us all there. That was the group that was gathered for the webinar in Bergen, Norway. It wasn't quite as snowy as you see in that photo there. It was much more rainy, but it was still quite a wintry experience and being in December. But a little bit of the background. Let me pull back a little bit for those of you who may not be as familiar with CBD and the work that goes on under CBD in the context of areas beyond national jurisdiction. So first, we have to remember that the CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity, does indeed have mandates with respect to areas beyond national jurisdiction, and the relation of the convention itself with respect to ABNJ is touched on in a number of provisions of the original convention itself, including Article 3 and the principle of the convention, Article 4, the jurisdictional scope of the convention, which notes that it applies that parties are to apply the provisions of the convention in the case of processes and activities, regardless of whether effects occur, carried out under its control or jurisdiction within national jurisdiction or beyond national jurisdiction. There's also a reference to cooperation, a reference to areas beyond national jurisdiction with respect to Article 5 on cooperation. In addition to that, the Conference of the Parties to the CBD has recognized that the CBD does have an important work to play in supporting the work, under the General Assembly with regards to different aspects of areas beyond national jurisdiction. In this case, it's specified marine protected areas beyond national jurisdiction by focusing on the provision of scientific and technical advice regarding biodiversity and the application of the ecosystem and precautionary approach. Now, all of our work under the CBD now is focused on supporting the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So this is what our parties are focusing on. This is what, of course, we in the Secretariat are focused on supporting, and this is really a focus for all, actually, our collaboration and work with other agencies and other processes as well. So basic, and as many of you probably know, the main focus at the moment is working towards the achievement of the 2030 targets, the 23 targets under the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which have an end date of 2030. Now, although there is not one specific ocean goal or ocean target in the framework, actually nearly every target of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is centrally and highly relevant to ocean issues. Actually, we can see across how the ocean is relevant across all of these different targets, and how pervasive ocean issues are in the context of achieving global goals for biodiversity. In that context, it can help us to understand a little bit how work under the CBD, how some of the technical work under the CBD on marine and coastal biodiversity has evolved over the years. So there's a number of different topics that have been addressed under the convention on marine issues, and this is just a snapshot of some of those. But it's also important to keep in mind that parties indeed have a broader sort of responsibility to implement the convention, and with respect to all of to even a broader range of issues than these specific issues, and also in the context of their engagement in other processes as well. But these are areas of work that have been developed and evolved under the convention process, under the guidance of the Conference of the Parties. A critically important area of our work also is engagement and collaboration with other intergovernmental processes. Indeed, we won't be able to actually achieve the targets and goals, or actually implement the convention, if we don't have this cooperation and this mainstreaming of these biodiversity considerations into these other processes. So the engagement and the attention of these other agencies and our collaboration with them is actually really an essential part of us achieving our mandate. Now, turning to the issue of areas beyond national jurisdiction, some of the we can return to some of the technical areas of work that I highlighted earlier, with the technical areas of work that are going on under the convention, and look at how these and others are centrally relevant to all of the main sections of the BBNJ agreement. So we see how there is basically a wide range and quite a depth of experience under the convention with respect to issues that are pervasive across the BBNJ agreement. This includes experience under the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing, emerging experience on digital sequence information, obviously all of these relevant to marine genetic resources, experience and guidance on marine protected areas and other effective area-based conservation measures. We coordinate the process on ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, which is relevant to a number of parts of the agreement, but perhaps most relevant to the area-based management tools part of the agreement. We have the CBD has developed voluntary guidelines on biodiversity inclusive environmental impact assessments, as well as developed guidance on key pressures, and obviously that's relevant to the EIA part of the agreement. We have a lot of work on capacity building, a long-term strategic framework on capacity building. We coordinate the Sustainable Ocean Initiative, which has a number of capacity building activities, as well as the SOE Global Dialogue. And we also coordinate 3 clearinghouse mechanisms, which can be helpful and instructive, and hopefully linked together with the BBNJ CHM. But in addition to the BBNJ agreement, there's a whole range of work under the convention that is relevant to various ABNJ management frameworks and processes. Of course, a lot of the attention right now is on the BBNJ agreement, and that's really exciting development. But we also know very well that there are a number of other existing authorities that have mandates and have regulatory authority in areas beyond national jurisdiction, including, for example, under the International Maritime Organization, the International Seabed Authority, regional fisheries management organizations. There's a whole range of different bodies out there that have relevant experience. A lot of this work, the relevant work under the CBD, can be, you can find this in a booklet that we've prepared, as you can see on the left, as well as a background document for the workshop that we're talking about here. And I'll show you both of these are available on the workshop webpage, which I'll show later in these slides. So pulling back to the background for the workshop, the mandate for the workshop came out of CBD COP 16 in 2024. This is a really important COP for marine issues. We had an important decision on EBSAs, where we had new modalities for the EBSA process, And we had an important decision on a wide range of other issues under the topic of marine, coastal, and island biodiversity. And one of the things that came out of that decision, Decision 1617, was the mandate for this workshop. So, thanks to the kind hosting of the Government of Norway and the financial support from Germany, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden, we hosted we convened the expert workshop on scientific and technical work conducted under the CBD relevant to biodiversity, marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction on 2 to 5 December in Bergen, Norway. The overall objectives were again taken from the COP decision, and the key elements of the mandate for this was to identify opportunities and to identify opportunities specifically for specific areas of scientific and technical work conducted under the convention. So there was a need to look very specifically at scientific and technical work and how this can contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity in ABNJ. We had we had a great group of participants. We had experts from parties, all those parties listed there. We had experts from a wide range of many of, if not all of the key international organizations with respect to ABNJ issues. We're missing a few, but actually just to have that many agencies gathered there was really important and valuable. And we all know how busy we are, so it's really challenging to get them all into one workshop. But we were really pleased to have that great group, as well as experts from major groups and from civil society. So the workshop looked overall at a wide range of different issues, including providing an overview of the ABNJ landscape, an overview of relevant work under the CBD. Then we looked at area-based management tools, biodiversity mainstreaming, which is relevant to EIAs, marine genetic resources, biodiversity monitoring, capacity building, approaches to coordination and cooperation, knowledge sharing, and national level planning and implementation. And then we pulled all those together into synthesizing the key opportunities. I would also encourage you to look at the workshop webpage, as it does have not only the report of the workshop, but also all of the presentations that were delivered at the workshop, the background document that I talked about, that flyer that I showed you earlier. So there's a lot of really useful resources on the workshop webpage. The main outcomes that we're going to talk about here are what we call the Bergen's Ocean of Opportunities, and this is the summary of opportunities by the co-chairs of the workshop. So this is the product of the work of the co-chairs, and this outcome, and I'll leave it to them to explain further. But basically, it looks at 3 different issue areas and opportunities for cooperation. One caveat that we have to note is that we know indeed that many of the issues that are covered in the summary might not relate directly to work specifically under the CBD. It might actually relate to areas of work that may be relevant for cooperation across other organizations or to issues that are more within the mandates of other organizations. But this does nonetheless reflect the natural evolution of the discussions that were held during the workshop, even if it sort of may have, wandered a little bit into topics that are relevant to other agencies and organizations as well. So now, with that, the original plan was to turn to the co-chairs of the workshop to present the outcomes. But we have our great colleague from UN Doualos, Charlotte Salpin, is actually having some travel difficulties. So we're going to give her a chance to actually hop in a little bit early and lend some of her reflections because she has to hop on a plane, I think in about 15 minutes. So Charlotte, we can now pass to you to share some of your remarks and reflections on the workshop. So please go ahead, Charlotte, if you can.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you also very much to the co-chairs for their understanding. My apologies for stepping right through. As Joe mentioned, I'm having travel difficulties these days. Should have been home 48 hours ago and still on the road. Anyway, it's a pleasure to join this webinar, in particular in light of the very good cooperation that we've had for many years with the CBD colleagues. And while we've worked on many different areas pertaining to marine biodiversity, today, obviously, I will focus on the input that the CBD could provide in the context of the BBNJ agreement, which is, for those that do not know, the agreement under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction. I will preface my remarks by saying that international cooperation and coordination, in particular cross-sectoral coordination, which I think is one of the aspects that Joe mentioned was part of the mandate for the Bergen workshop, is part of the general objective of the agreement, and it really is a critical aspect of the agreement and will be crucial for the effective implementation of the agreement. In that regard, the agreement foresees different modes of cooperation, including consultation processes, which will provide opportunities for various instruments, frameworks, and bodies, including the CBD, to provide input in respect of all the substantive areas covered by the agreement. So in that context, the workshop provided a very good opportunity to identify the scientific and technical work under the CBD that could be useful in the consideration by the Conference of the Parties established under the agreement of various aspects. I will start with marine genetic resources, which is one of the 4 key aspects of the agreement. I think the workshop really helped identify areas of mutual interest for future exchange of information between the Access and Benefit Sharing Committee that's established under the agreement and the CBD, including with respect to digital sequence information, as well as best practices, data governance, and lessons learned. On area-based management tools, including marine protected areas, which is the second key aspect of the BBNJ agreement. Discussions at the workshop pinpointed at various ways in which scientific and technical work under the CBD could inform the development of proposals for area-based management tools under the agreement, and also inform, obviously, the decisions of the Conference of the Parties in that respect. And that is the Conference of the Parties under the agreement. A third area where the workshop was useful is in respect of environmental impact assessment, in highlighting how work on environmental impact assessment and strategic environmental assessments, including guidance and guidelines, could inform the future work of the scientific and technical body under the agreement, in particular on the development of standards or guidelines for consideration by the agreement's Conference of the Parties. Last but not least, on capacity building, discussions brought to light obvious areas for potential synergies between activities under the CBD and under the BBNJ agreement, and the usefulness of utilizing existing initiatives under the CBD, such as the Sustainable Ocean Initiative, to that end. Now, on a more cross-cutting aspect, obviously, Joe mentioned the clearinghouse mechanisms, expertise of the CBD, and I think the workshop here really allowed to draw attention to the useful lessons that can be shared from the clearinghouse mechanisms under the Convention on Biological Diversity to inform the development of the clearinghouse mechanism under the agreement. So in closing, I have aimed to be very brief. The workshop was really useful in highlighting the complementary role of work under the CBD in line with the CBD scope and mandate in informing and contributing to the effective implementation of the BBNJ agreement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, and we really appreciate you joining despite your travel difficulties. We hope you have a safe flight, and many of us look forward to seeing you next week for this for the big PrepCom. So good luck with the final preparations and safe travels. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're going to turn to the co-chairs of the workshop, Mr. Gaute Hansen from Norway, and John Eric Avellino from the Philippines, who co-chaired the workshop and together developed the main outcomes of the workshop. So Gaute, over to you.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you also to Charlotte. So as you alluded to Joe, Norway was very happy to host this workshop at the law faculty in Bergen, Norway, on the west coast, just before Christmas last year, financed by Germany, Ireland, Sweden, and Norway. And I must say, the mood was very constructive indeed in this workshop. So I think the entry into force of the BBNJ agreement has sparked new interest and momentum for ocean science and governance as a whole. So this year will be really crucial as we move deeper into the CBD COP year that will culminate with COP17 in Yerevan, Armenia in October, and the first BBNJ COP1 in the end of this year, or in January next year at the latest. Sorry for moving my arms, but the light turned off, so I had to wave my arms to get it on again. So a range of the global goals and targets in the KMGBF are relevant for the KM, are relevant for marine issues. For example, the target of 30% protection by 2030. And tandem working and synergies will be crucial for activities in ABNJ. In the words of the Bergen Co-Chair summary, taking advantage of the entry into force of the BBNJ agreement to improve cross-sectoral coordination and cooperation. So ABNJ governance is multi-sectoral and no single body has all the tools, so there will be a range of opportunities out there. The experts in the workshop identified opportunities holistically across the board, or across the ocean, rather, I would say, predominantly for the CBD, for instance, regarding facilitating the uptake and use of EBSA information by the BBNJ agreement and other competent organizations, but not only for the CBD, which Joe also mentioned. For instance, experience and developing guidance on the 3D and 4D changes over time, nature of the open ocean and deep sea ecosystems, including regarding vertical connectivity and how it can inform management. This is sort of more a general opportunity, which is not clear which body that will take on. So it will be up to the parties to the BBNJ, the CBD and others to respond to and take up the opportunities in a collaborative manner. So when we structured the chair summary, we took care not to try to pinpoint exactly which body we think should consider follow up on the opportunities concretely identified. Except then for which is clear, belongs under the CBD. So we structured it in 3 parts. First, catalyzing improved national level coordination and cooperation. Second, cooperation across competent organizations on biodiversity related issues. And lastly, further work on the CBD convention, including tools and guidance. So I now give the floor to my co-chair and friend Eric from the Philippines to present on the national level coordination and cooperation. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gaute. So as mentioned by Gaute, my co-chair, will be presenting 3 basically output or main output of the workshop. So moving on to the next slide, this section basically highlights how the outcomes of the expert workshop emphasize the importance of strengthening coordination at the national level, particularly in light of the entry into force of the BBNJ agreement. So one of the key opportunities identified to leverage the BBNJ agreement is to leverage the BBNJ agreement as a catalyst for cross-sectoral cooperation. The conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction, as emphasized as well by previous speakers, cannot be addressed by a single institution or sector, as discussed during the workshop. Instead, it requires coordination among ministries and agencies responsible for different sectors dealing in the oceans. Another important aspect is collaboration between secretariats of relevant international organizations. It was discussed during the workshop that by sharing information and decisions and work under the Convention on Biological Diversity, including COP outcomes and technical guidance, these organizations can better inform their respective member states and expert communities. Supporting parties in promoting KMGBF and using CBD guidance in relevant organizations while respecting mandates and competencies was also one of the key discussions during the workshop. And this will enable us to support enhancing synergies among or across processes. The workshop also highlighted the value of thematic dialogues involving national experts and delegates from different processes, which can help bridge the gap between biodiversity governance and other sectoral ocean initiatives. And another key topic or themes that was discussed is that increasing awareness of linkages and potential synergies between the CBD and BBNJ agreement among national focal points of other relevant processes was also deemed very important by the participants of the workshop. Moving on to the next slide, still on improving national level coordination. So parties basically are encouraged to strengthen national coordination mechanisms among authorities responsible for different ocean sectors, including biodiversity conservation, fisheries, maritime transport, mining, and climate policy. Many of these actors are already operating on their own international regimes, but there was also an emphasis during the workshop on a stronger national coordination, which can help align their actions with global biodiversity objectives. One practical approach highlighted in the workshop is the establishment of cross-ministry focal point arrangements. These arrangements allow countries to designate representatives from multiple agencies who can coordinate positions and share information across international processes, such as the CBD and the BBNJ agreement. Another important opportunity is to engage relevant organizations in CBD processes, including the global review of progress in implementing the KMGBF, or the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Aligning national reporting process with KMGBF targets can also help ensure that progress on biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction is adequately reflected. No? And then finally, in terms of catalyzing improved national level coordination, the workshop also noted the value of informal initiatives and networks, such as those focused on digital sequence information, which provide additional information or additional platforms for dialogue and collaboration among countries and institutions. And now, moving on to the next section of the presentation, I'd like to turn it over back to my co-chair, Kaute, for the next section. Thanks, Kaute.
Thank you, Eric. Next slide, please. So next section is cooperation across competent organization on biodiversity related issues. As Charlotte mentioned, cooperation and collaboration is one of the main objectives of the BBNJ treaty, but as Joe mentioned as well, cooperation is also one of the central articles in the CBD regarding where ABNJ is specially mentioned as well. So this should lay the foundations for also a tandem approach, not just between the CBD and the BBNJ, but also between the CBD, sorry, the BBNJ and all the other bodies that have competence in ABNJ. So opportunities identified by the expert workshop was arranged. First, this opportunities regarding the Soil Global Dialogue, which two were identified, to continue cooperating through the Soil Global Dialogue, and then also to convene soil regional dialogues addressing ABNJ issues and engaging countries at the regional level to collaborate. And then also to continue cooperating to support biodiversity mainstreaming, including the ecosystem approach in sectors in ABNJ, and also to assess the level of implementation of the KMGBF in relevant sectors. And then also regarding MGRs and DSI, considering potential future mechanisms for cooperation. Of course, here we know that there is a platform for mutual supportiveness between MGRs and DSI and para 14. I believe it's para 14 number 9 in the BBNJ agreement. Next slide, please. So further on cooperation, implementation and monitoring of the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, using global sources of information for ABNJ to supplement information from parties, reporting on progress towards the KMGBF, and identifying and clarifying what data and knowledge is available and accessible from the various competent organizations to contribute to monitoring marine biodiversity in ABNJ and measuring progress towards the KMGBF in the ABNJ. Just a side note here, we know that the first global review of progress towards the KMGBF will be performed at COP17 in Yerevan later this year. So last one on this slide, identifying ways to improve the monitoring framework of the KMGBF to better account for marine biodiversity and ecosystems, including in the open ocean and deep sea, including developing marine-specific indicators. Next slide, please. So yeah, there's a slight lag from Montreal to Norway, so sorry about that. So next slide, knowledge and data sharing opportunities for CBD COP to provide mandates to the Secretariat to share information with competent organizations on thematic issues, and invite competent organizations to utilize information produced by the CBD for their work within their mandates. And then, of course, continuing to share experiences under the CBD in creating and managing clearinghouse mechanisms to inform discussions regarding the development and operation of the BBNJ clearinghouse mechanism. And this was also mentioned by Charlotte. Convening joint dialogues among competent organizations on information products that can support the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity and of ABNJ. Making relevant information from competent organizations available in the CBD clearinghouse mechanisms to inform CBD parties and stakeholders. And then lastly, on this slide, identifying key knowledge gaps in ABNJ. Next slide, please.
Marquetta's having some issues, so I'm going to take over sharing the slides. Hold on 1 second while I pull this up. Window, PPT, outcome slides. Okay. There we go.
Yeah, so next one, cooperating with competent and relevant organizations on tools and guidance. Exploring the role of ocean accounting to support economic cost-benefit analysis in order to better understand the implication of certain management measures. And then identifying gaps related to emerging pressures on biodiversity, e.g. marine geoengineering, and co-develop impact assessment tools, biodiversity risk frameworks, and KMGBF-related safeguards, and then facilitating scientific and technical dialogue across competent organizations to share experiences on identifying marine areas of ecological, biological significance, and identifying areas for building or enhancing potential synergies. Next slide, please. And then to strengthen the understanding of biodiversity and ecosystem structure and functions and ecosystem services in ABNJ, enhancing the understanding of climate change impacts on marine biodiversity and habitats in ABNJ, and enhancing the understanding of marine biological and ecological connectivity between marine areas within and beyond national jurisdiction. And also to identify needs for monitoring of key biodiversity features in ABNJ, including the essential ocean variables, EOVs, related to biodiversity. Next slide, please. So next, synthesize scientific information and data in support of defining the environmental characteristics and baselines of areas with the potential to be identified as ABMTs in ABNJ, to synthesize experience and developing guidance on the 3D and 4D changes over time. I mentioned this in my introduction, and then to synthesize experience and tools for and developing guidance on addressing cumulative pressures in biodiversity, such as seamounts, municipal systems. Next slide, please. And then lastly on capacity building, assessing capacity needs related to the conservation and sustainable use, including monitoring of biodiversity of ABNJ, building on assessments such as capacity for areas within national jurisdiction, facilitating cooperation between the CBD's sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation support centers, and relevant organizations, and then of course to explore blended finance models, and then to collaborate to explore how to support more monitoring through ships of opportunity programs. Next slide, please. And there, Eric will take over. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Gate. So moving to the section on the further work under the convention, the workshop also highlighted several opportunities to strengthen the use and accessibility of existing CBD tools and guidance. Next slide, please. So one important priority is improving access to guidance through the CBD clearinghouse mechanism and other digital platforms, including the potential use of emerging tools such as artificial intelligence to make information more accessible and usable. Another key area involves updating existing CBD guidance in collaboration with competent organizations. This includes voluntary guidelines on biodiversity inclusive environmental impact assessments and strategic environmental assessments, as well as guidance on issues such as anthropogenic underwater noise and marine debris. The workshop also noted the importance of updating scientific guidance used to design representative networks of marine protected areas, particularly in open ocean and deep sea habitats, improving understanding of representativity, connectivity, replication, and ecological viability in these environments will help strengthen conservation planning in ABNJ. Next slide. Another area identified for further work involves improving the understanding and application of other effective area-based conservation measures or OECMs, particularly in sectors operating in the open ocean and deep seas. The workshop highlighted the need to compile experiences and develop guidance on identifying OECMs in ABNJ, building on lessons from sectors such as fisheries. In addition, participants emphasized the importance of continued knowledge sharing on marine genetic resources and digital sequence information, or DSIs. These topics are closely linked to discussions under the BBNJ agreement and represent areas where collaboration between processes can be mutually beneficial. Strengthening knowledge exchange in these areas can help ensure that emerging governance frameworks are informed by existing scientific and policy experiences. Next slide. The workshop also highlighted the importance of improving quality, accessibility, and relevance of information on ecologically or biologically significant marine area, or EBSAs. We all know we've been working very hard on the modification, and one of the priority that was discussed during the workshop is that to ensure that EBSA descriptions are updated using the best available scientific information, including addressing knowledge gaps in areas beyond national jurisdiction. Activities could include expert workshops to support the submission of new EBSA proposals or modifications, particularly for areas where scientific knowledge has advanced significantly since the original descriptions were developed. Another important step is improving guidance on applying EBSA criteria in open ocean and deep sea environments where ecological process may differ for those in coastal systems. By strengthening EBSA information, the CBD can continue to provide a valuable scientific foundation that supports marine spatial planning and conservation efforts across different governance frameworks. Beyond improving EBSA descriptions, the workshop emphasized the need to enhance how EBSA information is used in decision making and ocean management. And this includes presenting EBSA information in ways that better reflect the three-dimensional nature of marine ecosystems, as emphasized by Gaute earlier, and how they change over time rather than relying solely on static spatial descriptions. EBSA information can also be used to better understand key ecological characteristics of marine areas, helping them to inform management decisions, spatial planning process, and the prioritization of management or monitoring efforts. Another important opportunity lies in facilitating the use of EBSA information by the BBNJ agreement and other competent organizations. For example, EBSA could be overlaid with information on human activities and pressures in ABNJ to help identify priority areas for conservation and management interventions. These efforts will help ensure that EBSA information remains relevant and useful in the evolving global ocean landscape. Next slide. Finally, the workshop also identified several areas where new scientific and technical guidance could be developed or synthesized under the Convention on Biological Diversity. So one of the priority that was identified is the development of guidance on climate smart area-based management tools and impact assessments, particularly for open ocean and deep sea environments. Another key area is strengthening the understanding of ecosystem services and cumulative impacts in ABNJ, including how multiple sectoral pressure interact to affect marine biodiversity. The workshop also highlighted the importance of developing guidance on biodiversity inclusive spatial planning in the open ocean, which can help inform emerging marine spatial planning initiatives beyond national jurisdiction. Additional work could also focus on scientific research activities, climate change impacts on ocean ecosystems, and standardized approaches to biodiversity monitoring in the open ocean and deep sea. Together, all of these efforts represent an opportunity for the CBD to continue providing scientific leadership and technical guidance that can support the implementation of the BBNJ agreement and other governance or ocean governance processes. So I think that wraps up basically the chair summary of the workshop. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, co-chairs, of course, for co-chairing the workshop, for developing these great outcomes, and for presenting them here. For our participants, you can see some QR codes listed there. The workshop report on the QR code that will take you to the workshop report on the top. And on the bottom, a bit of a more nicely formatted version of the outcomes. But we encourage you to have a look at those resources. We had to sort of, in some cases, trim some of the text, obviously, because to make it fit into a presentation. There's a bit more detail in the written out version, so we encourage you to consult that. But thank you very much, Gaute and Eric, for your work. So now we're going to turn to a panel of some of our key partners from other agencies. So, as we said, a key part of this workshop was looking at how work under the CBD and opportunities under the CBD can feed in to BBNJ management, and obviously a key part of that is understanding what's happening in different processes. So that is not only, of course, the BBNJ agreement, but other international processes that are out there. So we had all of these great experts gathered from these different agencies. These are just a few. We had actually many more at the workshop. And they, for all these different topics, they basically told us what's going on in their process and how, what are the opportunities for CBD work and collaboration to better contribute to the work under their respective processes. So we already heard from Charlotte, and she outlined some great insights with respect to the BBNJ agreement, but we have some of our other colleagues here who are going to share also their insights. So now with that, I'm pleased to pass to Martha Rojas Orrego from the head of the the Executive Secretary of the International Whaling Commission. Please, Martha, go ahead.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this webinar. I have to say that the workshop was extremely useful for the IWC, and its outcomes were very relevant to our work. This is because, of course, we have a mandate in the areas beyond national jurisdiction, being the body responsible for the conservation and management of whales and other cetaceans, which, as you know, spend a lot of the time and migrate in the high seas. We also have a very explicit request from our contracting governments to engage in both the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the BBNJ, and we are one of the IFBs in the context of the BBNJ. I wanted just to highlight a couple of features that I found extremely useful in the workshop. One was the combination of actors and stakeholders, because it was really interesting to hear the perspectives, the needs of the contracting parties, to hear from other IGOs the relevant work that they are doing, to listen to the perspectives of scientists and representatives from major groups and civil society. It was also an opportunity for us to share our work to an audience that we are not necessarily all the time connected with, and also to get feedback in terms of how to make our work more relevant for this important collaboration coming up. It was also timely, as it was mentioned before, because we have next week the meeting of the BBNJ and then an important agenda towards the COP of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So in providing some reflections, I am going to focus on 4 areas. As we saw, there is a lot very useful outputs. And I want to focus first on the strong focus of the meeting on collaboration and alignment. As you know, and we have heard, collaboration is critical, especially in the areas beyond national jurisdiction, and is a key feature of both the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the BBNJ agreement. And as Charlotte mentioned, this is one of the areas that is going to be part of the discussions at the COP, at the pre-COP next week. So the workshop helped in identifying what are these connections and how collaboration can take shape. It was also important, I have to mention, because all of us are working on synergies and finding effectiveness, in particular in the context of limited resources. So it was a very good practical way of seeing how to do that. And finally, I found extremely useful that we talked about collaboration at the global level, for example, among secretariats like us and other organizations, but also collaboration at the national level. And we heard that there are very good ideas in that, and we all know that is critical for collaboration at all levels. The second area that I'm going to mention is knowledge and data and the links to planning and monitoring, because the workshop devoted considerable time to that, and it was extremely useful to hear from different organizations what data, what knowledge, what tools, what guidance they have, and how can we use all these in a more collaborative manner and ensure that there is access for that for the work in areas beyond national jurisdiction, and how we could use mechanisms like the clearinghouse mechanisms under the CBD and those that are going to be developed under BBNJ. In particular for the IWC, this was extremely useful because for us, science, data, assessments are at the core of our work. Because the IWC has rigorous science-based data and a program of in-depth assessments of the status, distribution, and abundance of cetacean populations across the world. This is not so well known outside of the IWC, but is an extremely useful resource when we think about the importance of identifying key areas and management of marine areas of ecological significance, both EPSAs and those that are to be established under the BBNJ. It's also extremely useful for monitoring, for reporting, for environmental impact assessments, and of course we have specific targets on the global biodiversity framework that would use this type of information from all of us. And I think that it was also useful in terms of understanding ecosystem functioning. And we heard Garter mention that connectivity was one of the areas that we touched upon, including horizontal, like migrations, or vertical connectivity, which are areas in which the IWC is very engaged, as well as on the impacts of climate change. So, it was interesting to see how we can contribute to these areas that were identified as a priority. My third area is mainstreaming into sectoral activities. There are some elements in the co-chairs reports on that, and this is extremely important when, especially talking about the high seas, because we know that many of the causes of biodiversity loss happen in other sectors, and these sectors at the same time are trying to be more sustainable in their operations. So this was where collaboration, I think, is going to be more needed, and where there are some challenges that we need to overcome. In terms of the IWC, this is very important because the main threats to cetaceans today relate to other sectors with which we are working and collaborating already, like bycatch, and we're working with the FAO and RFMOs in that respect, noting that bycatch is the main threat to cetaceans today, vessel strikes and underwater noise that we are working on with the IMO, but also marine debris and climate change. These areas were mentioned, and there was a suggestion to develop guidance on that, and we would be very happy to contribute to that as well. And the final one is supporting implementation. So as we heard from the presentation, there was discussion about opportunities for capacity building, for example, with SOI, technology transfer, but also mobilization of resources. And I believe that this is really a key area where, if we work together, we're going to be able to implement in a very practical way the collaboration that we all are committed to and that we need to contribute to make effective the work on the high seas. So I'd like to finish by thanking the organizers, and of course IWC stands ready to contribute to the opportunities identified. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Martha, for sharing your insights here, and really we appreciated very much your input during the workshop, which was extremely valuable. So thank you again for your collaboration. We look forward to working together on those opportunities moving forward. So now we're going to turn to our friends in the International Seabed Authority. We have Wan Fei here with us, and she's going to share some insights from the perspectives of the ISA. Wan Fei, the floor is yours if you are here.
Thank you very much, Joe. Can you listen? Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Okay, great.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much to colleagues from CBD Secretariat and co-chairs for having me here. And yeah, I'd like to offer a few personal reflections from the expert workshop, which I was delighted to be part, that took place in Bergen last year. Well, first of all, the workshop provided an excellent opportunity for all of us in the Secretariat to learn what other organizations have been doing, and to also understand how we can potentially collaborate in some of the thematic areas covered during the workshop. And it was very clear that from the discussions at the workshop, there is a significant amount of guidance, knowledge, and also ongoing initiatives in some of the thematic areas that was discussed. For example, I think particularly related to spatial management tools and capacity building and collection of data, etc. So there is no need to completely reinvent view, and we need to instead look into ways to better connect what already exists, and also to identify synergies and opportunities and priorities for future collaboration across different organizations, which is also, I think, noted in the workshop reports. In this connection, ISE has built on and greatly benefited from the experience and work carried out by other organizations. For example, in our regional environmental planning process, which is a process to develop tools for the protection of the marine environment in the area. In doing this, we built on the criteria developed by the CBD for ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, ABSAs, as well as the criteria for vulnerable marine ecosystems developed by the FAO. In a similar manner, we also hope that our experience and our knowledge can also be useful in implementation of other global instruments and goals and objectives related to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. For example, in terms of the data we host, the tools we developed, etc. So my second reflection is that for collaboration to be effective and implementable, it should be built on a clear understanding of the existing systems of rules, policies, and processes, and reflect common priorities. What the discussions at the workshop mentioned that each organization has its own complex system of regulatory and policy frameworks and processes in place. So for tools and guidance and other initiatives to be applicable to different organizations, they must be consistent with this existing system of policies and regulations, or easily adapted to them. And I think we learned from the discussions that technical cooperation among the different organizations at an early stage of development is also very important. In this context, we found initiatives such as the SOI, Sustainable Ocean Initiative, providing a very effective means for our platform and venue for facilitating global and regional dialogue, while at the same time building a bridge between biodiversity conservation and sustainable use practices. There is also a good venue for identifying priorities for collaboration in specific initiatives and the topics. Another example is that ISE has been working with other UN secretariats through the joint group of experts on the scientific aspects of marine environmental protection, GISEMP, it's a long name, which was managed through the IMO Secretariat on some of the things such as identifying methodologies for cumulative impact assessments. So platforms like this are extremely important and effective to bring together the different organizations. Finally, but last but not least, is my final reflections related to information data sharing, which I think emerged during the workshop as a key area for collaboration. Not only for the different organizations, but also among the parties as an enabling condition for effective implementation of global targets and goals. We think that enhancing accessibility and standardization of data sets, as well as the interoperability of different databases is a very important step to enable evidence-based decision-making. Our experience connecting our own database, deep data, with the OVIS database and ODIS database, both coordinated by the UNESCO IOC, proves that it is a very lengthy and resource-intense process. It needs a lot of investment in terms of human and financial resources, but it is essential, and we are benefiting from improved access to our data through such a collaboration. In closing, I really want to thank the CBD Secretariat and the hosts of the Bergen workshop to provide such an excellent opportunity for us to share our experience and discuss the collaboration with other partners and partner organizations in very focused thematic areas. And we look forward to continued collaboration and also shared progress as we move forward. Thank you, Joe, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Wanfei. We appreciate you joining here, and again, for your great contributions during the workshop and sharing your valuable insights. So thank you very much for all of your collaboration. So now we're going to turn to our colleague Frederick Haag from the International Maritime Organization. As I'm sure you all know, the global intergovernmental organization that deals with the regulation of international shipping. Friedrich was supposed to join, but unfortunately had a conflict that arose, so he kindly sent us a video instead, which I'm going to play here, in which he likewise shares his insights on the workshop and its usefulness for work under the IMO.
Dear participants, I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you live, so to speak, today, but thank you to the CBD Secretariat for allowing me to record this little message and share with you. IMO participated throughout the entire process leading up to the adoption of the BBNJ agreement. We did so by providing information through statements and side events, and to support the process with information regarding our mandate and expertise to the best of our abilities. Many times we did so together with other UN entities or stakeholders from our sector to provide the best possible information to the negotiations and discussions. From our perspective, the perspective of international shipping, this is crucial since shipping is the biggest user of the surface of the ocean. And to ensure that shipping operates safely and with respect to the marine environment, IMO as an international organization has been around for a long time, more than 75 years, and has a long history of contributing to the governance of our ocean. Since the adoption of MARPOL and the London Convention, about more than 50 years ago, the 176 member states and more than 130 observers of IMO have continuously strengthened the regulatory framework and our efforts to ensure protection of the marine environment, while at the same time ensuring a sustainable and shipping industry that can provide the services that we all rely on. To this end, there are now more than 50 international conventions established under IMO, and about 20 of those relate to the marine environment. And one of the most important things to remember is that in principle, our regulatory framework applies to ships wherever they operate on the ocean, and many deal directly or indirectly with the protection of biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. To further protect areas that might be particularly vulnerable to the impacts from international shipping, and possibly of most relevance to the BBNJ agreement, IMO has several area-based management tools within its regulatory framework. These include, for example, the particularly sensitive sea areas concept, which can incorporate any IMO measure that is under the disposal of the organization to protect the marine environment. But these tools and processes, they have not been developed or implemented in isolation. There is continuous cooperation and dialogue with many other entities in the UN system. As an example, the PSSA process has similarities and much in common with the CBD EBSA process, and criteria when we identify areas, and we have a close ongoing dialogue with many other sectors and stakeholders. The PSSA process also stresses the importance of extensive consultation before a proposal for designation is submitted, and this is also followed by discussion and approvals in several subcommittees and committees in IMO. Now, IMO's measures are effective because when a vulnerable area has been identified, they regulate that specific activity, in this case international shipping, through a carefully crafted regime. And as you are aware, the BBNJ agreement states that in taking decisions, the COP shall respect the competences of and not undermine relevant legal instruments and frameworks and relevant global, regional, and sub-regional and sectoral bodies. This is important since all the international frameworks and bodies at global and regional levels have established processes that we need to build on and continue to work smoothly. Only by understanding each other and each other's processes better can we ensure that the BBNJ agreement will work in practice. So opportunities to share information and experiences and build a better understanding of the pieces that need to work together are therefore very important. So I've been very pleased to be part of this initiative by CBD and to share information on IMO's work to all of you. So once again, thank you, and I do apologize for not being able to participate live, but thanks to the organizers for allowing me to share these few remarks. Thank you very much.
Great. And he can't hear me, but I'll thank Friedrich anyway for his engagement. Just as with our other colleagues, he was very intensely engaged in the workshop and sharing a lot of their work and how work under the CBD can contribute. So now we're going to actually turn to my bosses, some of my bosses, in amongst the party delegates. Obviously, under the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Secretariat, we take our orders from the Conference of the Parties. So it's very important what parties think and feel about the work that's going on and ensuring that it's living up to the mandates that they provide. In that regard, we've invited a few of the participants from the workshop, who are also from parties, of course, to share their reflections on the workshop. So we'll start first with our colleague Jesus Guerra Bell from Cuba. So please, Jesus, the floor is yours. Is Jesus there? We're having trouble finding Jesus, so we'll perhaps come back to Jesus, but now we'll turn to Farah Chaudhry from the UK. Farah, I think you're here, Farah. I'm pretty sure I saw you. So
I am here. Thank
there
you,
you
Joe.
are.
Can you hear me?
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the CBD Secretariat and partners for organising this workshop and inviting me to take part. And thank you to all of the workshop participants, including those who've shared their reflections today. You can see from the sheer number of opportunities presented that the conversation has been very fruitful and it's timely, not least because parties to the CBD have just submitted their 7th national reports showcasing their actions and progress in implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The UK's 7th national report includes some of our activities in areas beyond national jurisdiction, such as our participation in regional fisheries management organisations. And there will be more opportunity to understand the conservation and management status of ABNJ once the BBNJ agreement is being implemented. But there is a clear need to continue to improve our understanding of the synergies and opportunities for coordination and cooperation across the CBD, BBNJ agreement and the other frameworks and bodies, including those present here today, including how they can support implementation of the KMGBF. So to add my reflections as a country representative to this discussion, there are many opportunities, but I have picked 3 that I think stand out as particular interest to myself. Firstly, the opportunity to better understand information and capacity needs across areas within and beyond national jurisdiction for implementation of both the CBD and the BBNJ agreement, and to better facilitate cooperation between the relevant organisations engaged in capacity building activities. As suggested in the summary report, this could be done through convening joint dialogues on thematic or regional scale for sharing of experiences, challenges and needs. And I do want to also stress that the CBD's technical and scientific support centres can play a valuable role here in capacity needs assessment and maximising those cooperation and synergies by coordinating with each other and other similar initiatives to support implementation of the KMGBF, including in ABNJ. My second reflection is that there is an opportunity here for more scientific and technical work under the CBD to identify and fill these knowledge gaps and monitoring needs. This would build on the existing CBD Marine Programme of Work and the COP16 decision that identified additional gaps, and would support implementation of the KMGBF and also potential future work of the BBNJ scientific and technical body, noting that obviously discussions are ongoing at the BBNJ Preparatory Commission meetings, with the ongoing meeting happening next week. And that will include some focus on the establishment of the STB and its functions. But the kinds of opportunities here could include synthesis of information on ecological connectivity, as mentioned by colleagues earlier. An area I'm particularly interested in methodologies for addressing cumulative impacts, biodiversity monitoring needs and ocean accounting, and impacts of climate change on various types of open ocean and deep sea ecosystems. There's also an opportunity here for the CBD to support development of new tools and guidance for use for marine biodiversity in ABNJ. For example, the climate smart area-based monitoring tools and sector-specific guidance for mainstreaming, which was mentioned by Martha earlier, based on the fisheries experience that the CBD already has. Thirdly, the development of ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, or EBSAs, under the CBD has been a hugely valuable contribution to the identification of important areas of the ocean globally. But as we've discussed, more work could be done to better facilitate the use of that information by other competent organisations in ABNJ, and particularly to ensure EBSA information is utilised to support identification of proposed area-based management tools under the BBNJ agreement. So here, a future global expert workshop hosted by the CBD to identify new areas and update existing area information could help facilitate this. And finally, there will be other opportunities for cooperation and coordination in longer time, particularly once the various bodies under the BBNJ agreement have been established and are functioning, such as improving access to information amongst relevant organisations, similar to what Wang Fei suggested earlier. And in terms of ensuring that benefits are shared from the use of marine genetic resources in line with the BBNJ agreement, it is important to note that the Cali Fund is now operational and that COP17 will address some elements of its modalities. So it's important that we stay close to that process to ensure that the Cali Fund remains an option should parties to the BBNJ agreement decide to make use of it. And this could include aligning hosts of the special fund with that of the Cali Fund. These are just a few of the opportunities that are of particular interest to us in the UK. And over the coming months, we'll be giving some consideration to what could be taken forward within the CBD, while of course being careful not to preempt any recommendations of BBNJ PrepCom or outcomes from the first BBNJ conference of the parties. So thank you again to the Secretariat and organisers, and I look forward to exploring these opportunities with you at future CBD meetings. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Farah, for your insights, and great to have you involved in this work at the workshop and to have you as one of our great party marine friends. So thank you. So we're having a little bit of trouble finding Jesus. He might not actually be in the meeting. I thought he was in the meeting earlier. He might have some connectivity issues. What we'll do now is we'll turn to some of the questions that we have in the Q&A function. You see some of those published now. I see also that I think a few have come through the chat box. So if you wouldn't mind popping those into the Q&A so we can keep better track of them. I'd also a few of these I might, or one of these I think I might turn to some of our party delegates here, from including the co-chairs and Farah. But first, let me address the question related to from a name that I don't quite know what that is, DJEPH. They're asking whether at the CBD level there is any draft or there's any document guiding environmental impact assessments, and that which can be used in the case of marine accounting. Basically, is if there's any guidance from the CBD regarding environmental impact assessment. So, indeed there is, and this was one of the topics that was discussed during the workshop. Years ago, I believe it would have been in 2000 and maybe 2012, around that time, or a little bit before that, the CBD developed biodiversity inclusive EIA guidelines. Now, these initially were generally biodiversity inclusive for all biomes and ecosystems. They weren't specific to any ecosystems, but these were subsequently annotated specifically for issues with respect to the deep sea and open ocean. This was quite, I think, forward-looking for its time, and was quite useful also. But they were developed quite a long time ago, more than 10 years ago. So it was identified during the workshop the need to update those guidelines to make them more useful for different purposes, including under the BBNJ agreement. Obviously, there are EIA processes or EIA-like processes under other competent authorities, including the International Seabed Authority and RFMOs, and they have different aspects of mitigating the environmental impacts of some of the activities. So there would need to be there's a lot of experience that can be integrated from those different agencies and organizations that can help support the development and the updating of those guidelines, because indeed that was something that the workshop identified as one of the things that can be done to update these guidelines. But I think also Farah pointed to an important point, that a lot of the opportunities that were identified are a bit longer term, things that some of the things that can be done now, and we identify a bit of the workshop identified a bit of an urgent and immediate need for, as well as some things that can help guide us a little bit into the future, and things that we'll have to keep an eye on more so as the BBNJ agreement further develops its institutional framework, and as the mechanisms of cooperation and coordination across different bodies are further elaborated. A lot of the things that were identified will become a bit more clear in terms of how we can pursue those. So that's where the workshop was quite useful, not only in helping to inform our discussions now, but giving us a little bit of a roadmap as we look forward to the future of the BBNJ management. Now, we have a question from Maximilian, our colleague Maximilian from the ABCD. He's asking more about national coordination, and he's asking whether, he said, in addition to inviting parties to strengthen national coordination, were any mechanisms or concrete modalities discussed or recommendations made? Now, I think I'm going to turn to some of our party friends, our party delegates on the call for this, but I want to emphasize that actually the focus on national coordination and national action was not really the focus of the workshop. The workshop was really much more focused on scientific and technical work under the convention. So, how that looks at the national level and things of that nature was not really the focus of the discussions. But of course, as we were discussing all of these things, a lot of it was really underpinned by the fact that countries need to better coordinate internally. But we didn't go very much further than that in terms of how parties and how countries should do that or could do that. We know obviously there's a lot of experience in different respects with that. There was also a lot, as was highlighted in the presentation by the co-chairs, the need for the respective secretariats of different organizations, including ourselves, to do a little bit more to bring to the attention of our focal points and of other focal points relevant work that can support engagement in other processes. So what kinds of things have emerged under the CBD? What forms of guidance and COP decisions that actually can help them and they engage in other international processes, and vice versa. What exists in other processes that can help inform their engagement in the CBD. So all of these kinds of things that are a bit national level coordination, a bit international engagement were also discussed. But we did have a session during the workshop to hear from parties about how they're organizing themselves nationally or thinking nationally about how they're going to actually roll out and how they approach BBNJ management and coordination internally on with respect to BBNJ issues. So I'm going to put some of my colleagues on the spot if I hope they don't mind, but I would really ask whether if Gaute, Eric, or Farah might be able to share some reflections about how they within their countries are coordinating with respect to BBNJ issues. So none of them. So if any, Gaute, Farah, Eric, would you like to comment on this? Gaute, please go ahead.
Thank you, John. Trying to react as quickly as I can. No, so this is really important because and this is of course one of the big opportunities looking at the BBNJ treaty and the KMGBF and CBD in context because they both deals with biodiversity, right? So what we have done for years in Norway in the BBNJ process is we have a team consisting of people from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the legal department, which leads the process. And then we had people from my ministry, the Ministry of Climate and Environment, who are members of the delegation, but also the Ministry of Trade and Fisheries, right? So there we have the most sort of most important, you might say, ministries involved in the delegation itself, and then of course we've had meetings with other ministries involved as well, and we've also had a broader process with Norwegian society to get input from the researchers and other stakeholders, and sort of the same, we have the same process regarding the CBD and the KMGBF as well. So I think in a sense there's a big opportunity now to even enhance this further, right? Now towards the first meeting of the parties of the BBNJ and also when we get the COP cycles going, I think there will be a lot of potential to get a real grip on ABNJ biodiversity issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaute. Now we are coming to the end of our webinar here. As I had said in the chat, let's see if there's any more. Well, there's one more question. Let's say we have a little bit of time, so we'll take one more from our colleague Freydis from Iceland, who is another one of our good CBD Marine friends. So Freydis is asking on the topic of CHM, clearinghouse mechanism, and lessons learned from the CBD's CHMs to take to the BBNJ process, whether there was any special points on do's and don'ts, and what the workshop did, whether the workshop recommended to look at or anything to avoid. Has there been any review of the CBD CHM generally in the past? So indeed, we in the Secretariat have been advising, giving our input and advice on the development of the BBNJ CHM in many different forms. Of course, we've been engaging in the PrepCom process, and well before that. We've also been engaged in a number of some of the informal dialogues and discussions on the CHM, and that is from the perspective of the three of our CHMs. As I said, we have three CHMs, and all of which function quite differently. One CHM for the convention, one CHM for the Nagoya Protocol, and one CHM for the Cartagena Protocol, all three of which have rather different purposes. We've also been coordinating and providing input and guidance and advice based on our experiences to DOALOS. And some of those experiences and the information there are captured in a report that was just published under the BBNJ PrepCom on the BBNJ PrepCom webpage. The DOALOS hired a consultant to prepare a study on the BBNJ CHM, and that pulls from some lessons from other CHMs out there, including ours, and identifies potential means of linkages and interoperability with those CHMs. There's a lot of lessons that have been, imparted. There's been many. We've been running our CHMs for many years, but I think, some of the key ones that are CHM experts in-house. I am not one of the CHM experts. We have other obviously specific officers that coordinate the CHMs. But some of the key ones they had flagged and they had highlighted repeatedly is, the importance of a pilot phase and the importance of taking the pilot phase quite seriously and using that as an opportunity to do some adaptive management and corrections where needed, and looking and getting feedback on the function and operation of the CHM for the users in particular. I think often in some cases we tend to set up these online mechanisms in the way that we think they should work, but often we don't think enough about what the users will actually need, how it will work for them, and how best to facilitate the uptake and use. Another aspect that was discussed from the perspective of the CBD CHMs are looking at orienting the structure and function around what the actual objective of the CHM is. As I said, our three CHMs have different functions, have different objectives, so they function and operate differently. From our perspective, the BBNJ CHM is called one CHM, but it has many different functions, and some of those objectives are quite different from each other. So it would be important in that regard to structure the CHM in a way that can best facilitate the achievement of those objectives, and doing so in a way that makes sure it's actually targeting the thing that it's trying to do. I think another aspect of it was giving sufficient resources, sufficient staff resources to support the operation of the CHM, especially in the early phases, because there will be a lot of feedback and mistakes and corrective management needed. In that regard, having an advisory body also is really essential to guide the work of the CHM, and an advisory body that is composed of people who are experts in that topic and in that field. So those are just a few of the observations that have come out. But I would encourage you, Freydis, and others to have a look at that report that was published recently on the webpage for the BBNJ PrepCom, that is meant to support the discussions on the BBNJ CHM, because it does link to and it does point out some linkages and lessons from the CBD side, as well as from many other similar mechanisms. So with that, I think we can wrap up. There's more questions coming in. So I think we have to move on and close the webinar. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for those of you that we didn't have time to get to your questions. But we hope you found this webinar useful. We had a lot of people following online here, more than 170 people. So that's hopefully at least most of you found this useful. Again, I encourage you to have a look at the workshop report. which could be useful for some of your thinking. If you have any delegates who will be engaging in the BBNJ PrepCom, this could be useful to get your thinking moving a little bit, especially with regards to the item that deals with relations and engagements with other with the BBNJ agreement with other international frameworks and bodies. Yeah, we hope to see many of you either at the next BBNJ PrepCom next week, or one of our upcoming meetings, the CBD Substa coming up this summer, and COP later this year. But once again, just like to thank the Government of Norway for hosting the workshop, and the governments of Germany, Ireland, Sweden, and Norway for giving us the financial support to make this possible. The presentations will be shared with all the registered participants. There weren't that many slides. There was just a few, as you could see from my side, and from and also the presentation of the co-chair summary. And we also will plan to post the recording of this webinar on YouTube, so that others who weren't registered can hopefully have a look at it as well. So thanks everyone for your attention, for your engagement, and we hope you found this useful. With that, we'll close this webinar. Thanks to all, and have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.